Hello and welcome to the show. Today we're going to be reintroducing a really old element of trust, and I know it's something that I've discussed over and over and over again over the last 3 years that the podcast has been running. But there are a couple of people who haven't been with us from the beginning. They're catching us at this current episode, or maybe they've been with us for the last 10 or 20 episodes. And so this is something that is new to them and they haven't heard. And apart from that, even if you've heard this gospel before, it's something that we have to keep repeating over and over again so that we don't lose sight of it, because today's show gives a very concrete example about why these things are important and how it's costing us money every single, okay, I was going to say every single day. Let's just say every single year, because hopefully we're not running foul of this thing every single day. And in fact, if you run foul of the elements of trust every single day, you're not going to have much of a business because people are going to avoid you. So this is something that is important and that um, we can't stress, we can't overstress at all. So those of you who've been listening for a while, you know about the elements of trust. And these are things that we need to do to make us trustworthy. These are things that make people feel comfortable doing business with us. Now, there are lots of frameworks that we have explored in the past. There's the episode where I went over something written by two professors from the Harvard, what's it called, Harvard Business Review. Yes, the Harvard Business Review. I can't remember the year, but I know it was on trust, and I think I did 2 or 3 episodes on that. So once you're done listening to this episode, if you want to hear what the episode was about and the ideas that we explored in it, I can't remember off the top of my dome, so that's why I can't give you a summary on what the particular things that we discussed were. But yeah, just check it, HBR review. Once you're done listening to this podcast episode, search within this podcast and you'll find it, or just scroll. You have to scroll quite a bit because I think now we're over 620 episodes on the podcast. So where was I? Okay, so apart from the Harvard Business Review article, I've been talking a lot about Tom Hopkins. He's a sales trainer from the USA. He's a sales trainer in the real estate space, and he formulated this thesis in the 1980s. Not just him, but with another fellow that he published a book with. I can't remember the other fellow's name, but if you Google, I'm sure you'll be able to find it. Before I continue, I'd like to point out one thing. Let's not get worried that he's talking to real estate professionals, because for me, when I began my sales journey, I had this nasty habit because my brother would try and share stuff with me. He would share Brian Tracy, and at the time my response to my brother was, thank you very much, I've seen Brian Tracy. He's talking to finance professionals, but I'm a wedding photographer, so this has absolutely nothing to do with me. At the time my brother was trying to introduce me to this stuff, I was knee deep in wedding photography, and so I wasn't interested in hearing from folks like Brian Tracy, Tom Hopkins, Grant Cardone, you name it, because as far as I was concerned, these people are talking about one specific kind of sales, and it didn't apply to my own industry. So I didn't think there was any point in a wedding photographer listening to an old guy talk about real estate, especially since his ideas came from the 1980s, and I was trying to be a wedding photographer in the 2010s. How do you say it? Let's just say 2010s. I'm not sure what the way of saying that is. So, for those of you who still have that mindset, don't be afraid that he's talking about stuff from 40 years ago, and he's talking to real estate professionals. The reason why we shouldn't be bothered is because sales principles are universal and they apply to all industries. Now, let me repeat. Sales principles are universal. That doesn't mean that sales tactics are universal. Tactics are the ways that we apply the principles in one case or another. The principle that we're following is going to be the same for people in real estate, for people in wedding photography, and for people in carpentry or agriculture. The principle will be the same. The tactics of how we apply it are going to be different. For instance, we are talking about trust. The principle that trust is an important part in sales and is going to reduce people's apprehension or resistance when they're dealing with you, that principle is universal. How you apply that principle as a wedding photographer is going to be different from how you apply that principle as a brain surgeon or as a cardiologist or as an architect or as somebody who sells insurance. So the principle is the same. We need trust to reduce the level of apprehension so that people can calm down and listen to us in the first place. No trust, they are not calm, they are not listening, no sales. So, the sales principle here, trust. The tactic, how it is applied, differs according to your industry, according to your business practice. But you can see that the principle is universal and applies to all industry. The tactics are different. So, for Tom Hopkins, his idea behind trust, the reason why I keep talking about it is because I think it's easy to remember because it involves 3 C's. So Tom Hopkins talk about credibility. The idea behind credibility is, do you seem to be who you say you are? If you come across one way, or you're trying to present yourself one way, but then people think that that is not how you are, then you lack credibility. Then there's another C, that's commonality. Commonality is this whole thing of, are we on the same wavelength? You might seem credible, and the customer thinks you're credible and they're talking with you. But if the customer thinks like, I beg, this guy, me and him, we're not vibing, he's on a different wavelength, it's going to pour sand into the whole process. Or should I say salt? No, sand, okay. It's going to pour sand into the whole process because you seem credible, but there's no commonality. You guys are not on the same wavelength. That's the experience that we wedding photographers, well, back when I used to be following the wedding photography space, that's the experience we would get where the prospect would laugh at us and say, it's like you think I'm Dangote or something. Because the customer, the potential client, the potential bride, is telling you about her dream day. Maybe because of the comments you're making or the way you're looking at them or the figures that you're quoting, they now feel like, oh, this person is looking at us as if we are the children of billionaires or something. We're not on the same wavelength, and that causes problems. Then the final C is competence, and that is, do I look like I can do the job? You might appear credible, you guys might have some commonality, like you guys are vibing, but then they look at your Instagram handle and like, Kai, this guy is photography, is this guy really a photographer? Can he do the, that's where competency comes in. Do you look like you can do the job? And that's why I think Tom Hopkins, his whole thing around trying to establish trust is easy to remember because it's 3 C's. There's credibility, there's commonality, and there is competence. Now, you don't have to rely on the definitions that I've given right here. In fact, to be fair, I don't think the definitions that I've given here are exactly what Tom Hopkins would say if you come across his book or if you come across his training material. But that's the beauty about having the internet and YouTubes and all that. So you guys can Google or you can buy his book on Amazon, and then you can read for more detailed, more detailed treatise about the 3 C's and how they apply to your business. So credibility, traditionally, we establish this by flaunting our degrees or flaunting our qualifications or flaunting how professional we are, or our manner of dress, mode of communication, professional etiquette, our decorum, stuff like that. So traditionally, that is how we establish credibility. So this is something that the lawyers and the doctors know very well. The doctor wants to appear credible. The lawyer wants to appear credible. You step into the office, what do you notice? The wig and gown hanging by the side of the desk. That's for the lawyer. So that's that lawyer look. And then behind the desk, you notice is a call to bar certificate framed and hanging high on the wall. Doctors do that as well. If they were trained in John Hopkins or something, and if they were trained in John Hopkins, then the degree will be hanging there. Is it embossed? It'll be embalmed. What do you call it? And you get the picture anyway. Certificate is there in a frame above the doctor's desk, so that you can tell that he got his medical degree in John Hopkins and he didn't get it in Benue State University. So you better pay attention to him because he's a top-notch brain surgeon, because his degree he didn't get it in Nigeria. For those of you who are not listening for those of you who are listening from other parts of the world, it's a thing in this country, and I'm sure also in your own country, wherever you're listening to, that some institutions, sometimes foreign institutions, are thought to be much more credible than the local institutions you have. And so there are some cases where people will look at foreign trained medical doctors in Nigeria as better than the local trained doctors. I'm not trying to say that is the case. I'm just trying to say that is the perception. So traditionally, lawyers, doctors, that's how we would flaunt our credibility, the way we dress, our degrees, stuff like that. And then that's the reason why in the past lawyers would use all those big fancy Latin words, nemo dot quod non habet, and blah blah blah. And people hear it and they get bamboozled, like, this guy, he's a legit lawyer because he knows his stuff. He speaks Latin. Then commonality. To establish commonality, we do this by leaning in on common backgrounds in our conversation. We're going to find personal interest, professional interest, stuff like that. And when that happens, we have to lean into that and we have to emphasize it. And that's something that in the wedding space, wedding photographers, wedding planners are very good at doing that kind of thing. Like, oh, you graduated from Obafemi Awolowo University. Yeah, me too. What's said? Okay, did you know Kunle? Did you know this person? Did you know that person? Oh, university was such a blast, blah, blah, blah. Where did you do your master's? Oh, me too, blah, blah, blah. And, that whole thing is just establishing commonality so that you guys can see that you have similar personal and professional interests, and it allows people to lower their guard and listen to what it is that you have to say, because after all, you are kind of like them. A special note, when it comes to establishing commonality, we should remember to stay away from religion and stay away from politics. The reason why we should do that is because these are hot button issues, and I don't think there's any point in getting embroiled in these sorts of things. So let's go back to the wedding photographer example, wedding photography or wedding planning example. I'm a wedding photographer. I'm a wedding planner. I just want to plan your wedding and I want the money. I'm not going to get into any arguments about whether God exists or not. So I'm a Christian. I'm Catholic. You're an atheist, you don't believe that God exists, you think that this ceremony is stupid, and as far as you're concerned, you're only doing this so that mommy and daddy can be happy. You guys want to get through all of this stupid whatever so that by the time you're done, you and your husband can go back to the USA where you're based and continue living your life. That's not an argument I'm interested in getting involved in. I'm your photographer or I'm your wedding planner. I just want to plan this wedding to the best of my ability, make sure everybody's happy, collect my money and leave. So, whether you believe in God or not, it's none of my business. Maybe when we meet later on after the wedding, we can talk about some of these things. But for now, I'm going to stay away from religion and politics when we're trying to seal the deal. Now, there is one exception to the rule. There are some business people where it is absolutely pivotal and it is key to their brand or it's key to their business proposition for them to talk about religion or politics. So there are some businesses that cater to only Muslim patrons, or like Jehovah's Witnesses, for instance. There are some businesses that prefer to cater to only Jehovah's Witnesses, like some hospitals that are specialist hospitals that will only deal with Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff like that. I don't know if we have any of them in Nigeria. So if that's your thing, then yes, you have to really play up the religion talk and the politics talk, because if you only want to deal with a Muslim, you might as well key it up so that all the Christians go away. It makes your life easier. If you only want to deal with Jehovah's Witnesses, you might as well play up that whole God talk so that all the Catholics and the Baptists and the Anglicans and the Muslims will run away, and then you're only left with Jehovah's Witnesses. And if you're Donald Trump, who's getting ready to run again, then by all means, you need to talk about religion. You need to talk about politics so that everybody who is on the left, is it left or is it right? How do the Americans say this thing? On the left. Yeah, let's say left. I think Trump, you would say he's right, far right. So everybody who is on the far left, they know that this is your stand and they run away from you, and so that your core people who know your stand will run towards you. So if it's part of the allure of doing business with you, religion or politics, then please, by all means, play it up. But if that's not the case, then nobody needs to know, nobody needs to care. So is Dangote a devout Muslim? People don't know and they don't care. They just want the cement, they want his spaghetti, they want his he's opening a refinery soon. We want his fuel. Is he a devout Muslim? We don't know. We don't care. Does he really believe in God? We don't know. We don't care. Does he like Tinubu, the current president? We don't know. We don't care. Does he prefer Obi? We don't know. We don't care. We just want fuel. We just want cement. We just want whatever. The same thing with Bill Gates. You want your computer to work okay. Windows 98, Windows this, Windows that. Is Bill Gates a Christian? We don't care. We don't know. What's his politics? We don't care one way or another. Those are not the things that influence whether people do business with them. So that's all on commonality. Okay, so we're already close 15 minutes, so let me run quickly and wrap this up. Then competence, that's also similar to credibility. Basically that just means, do you seem like you're the subject matter expert? there's no point in going into the whole competence thing, because I think 2 podcast episodes ago I already spoke about being a subject matter expert. So if this is your first time listening to the show, once you're done with this, skip back 2 or 3 episodes. You don't have to search. You just use your thumb, flip 1, 2, 3. It'll be there. I think it had subject matter expert in the title or something like that. So the reason why we're going over all of this today, and why I'm trying to freshen your memories for those of you who've been listening to the show for a while and who are familiar with me talking about Tom Hopkins, is this. For those of you who haven't listened to the older episodes, and this is your first time of coming across these sorts of things, pay attention. This is the reason why I'm going all over this again today. I had a recent experience of trying to sell dredging equipment, dredging services in the maritime industry. Dredging is a process of taking, ships, equipment, all kinds of stuff to the sea, because sometimes you're trying to get minerals from the soil. Sometimes you're trying to reclaim land. Sometimes you're trying to get rid of pollutants. There could be different reasons, but basically that's what the dredging industry is all about. We're going out there into the edge of the sea, into the edge of the river. Okay, no, not rivers. Rivers are shallow. Basically, we're going to the edge of the sea. We're trying to reclaim land. We're trying to mine for some resources. We're trying to do different kinds of things. Sometimes you reclaim land because you want to put up a bridge from one community to another. So you reclaim some land so you can build a bridge. Sometimes you do dredging because you're trying to prevent floods. If you reclaim some land here and plant some trees, then maybe this village is not going to flood. Different reasons. Lots of reasons why people dredge. And so I've been chatting with someone, and I was going to try and sell dredging equipment. So one of the reasons why I'm doing that is this. Because as a sales expert, I think I should broaden my industry knowledge base. It'll make me appear more credible. Remember what we've been talking about here, 3 C's: commonality, competence, credibility. So I'm trying to be more credible. So I'm trying to challenge myself to go beyond small and medium scale industries, because I started off talking to wedding photographers, wedding planners. I've gone beyond that right now, but I'm still the small, medium scale. Let's say small scale, not even medium scale. So that's why I'm looking at other things. And then plus, the commissions in some industries are way better than others. So 10% of a high ticket item is a lot better than 10% of a low income item. So if you're selling a product, as a salesperson, and you're getting 10% of, a 1 million deal, that's a lot sweeter than getting 10% of a 400k deal. So of course, you now understand why I'm looking to other things, and I was trying my hand at dredging equipment. Anyway, where was I? Okay, so I ended up trying to sell dredging services for a Lagos-based company. I tried to set up a deal in Warri, where he would go to look at some dredging equipment to buy, and the fellow didn't follow up, and the way he responded, I won't go into details, it started giving me some red flags about this guy's character. But I decided to give it a benefit of a doubt, and after all, I'm chasing money. It's all about that dollar, so whatever. So on to the next deal. So I tried to hook him up with a job in Bayelsa. This one was a dredging job, and the financiers refused to touch the project that this particular guy was involved in, because in the past they had dealt with him, and he tried to cut out middlemen in the deal, and he wanted to handle the deal himself. Now, in this part of the country, I'm not going to talk about the legality of it or the ethics of it, but in this part of the country, in Nigeria, this is considered really poor professional etiquette. If you step into a deal and there are a couple of people, let's say 4 or 5 people, even though you think 2 of them are not adding any value, the expectation is that you're going to be upfront with everybody in the food chain and not try to cut people out. So in this part of the world, in Nigeria, it will be considered more professional if you looked at the other people in the face and say, look, you know what, you're adding absolutely nothing here. I don't see what you're adding to this thing. I'm like, guy, I don't like you. I'm not giving you anything. So if you were to tell somebody that up front, it's considered much more professional or much more respect worthy. Nobody will hold it against you. At least you spoke your mind, rather than trying to go to the back and then cut out people and then make sure that people don't get their commissions. So he didn't do this with me, but he had been involved in a deal with this particular financer I was talking to, and he refused. Like, oh, is it this guy? No. If it's him, no. You can bring anybody else, but don't bring this guy. So most people fail to realize that yes, the world is a big place. So you think you can do something here, And what's the problem? Nobody will know. You go on and you look for other business partners. But then people forget that even though the world is a big place, the industries that we operate in are actually very small. So Abuja is a big place if you're a wedding photographer. But the wedding photography industry in Abuja is a lot smaller place. After a while, after about 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, everybody kind of knows everybody. And everybody starts talking about everybody else. So, if you want to engage in sharp practices as a wedding photographer, as a makeup artist, it's cool the first year, the second year. By year 3 to 5, people already know who is who, and then there's some wedding planners who say, hey, is it this wedding photographer? I'm not going to do any business with this guy. Somebody else, but not this guy. And it's also the other way around. There are some wedding photographers who say, whoa, is this your wedding planner? Please, pay me the money directly. I'm not going to deal with this. I'm not going to allow my money to be passed through this particular wedding planner. That's because even though the world is big, yes, and there's abundance, the industry is small. It's been a while. It's been 5 years. It's been 7 years. Everybody's talking. So everybody knows about you. Everybody knows about the other person. So you can be sharp today and save yourself some millions, but it's going to cost you tomorrow because there's some people that are going to say, hey, is it this guy? Is this Tavishima? I'm not going to do business with him. Is it Chukudi? I beg. If it's Chukudi, me and Chukudi, we don't mix. So please, I'm not doing anything. Take the deal and go elsewhere. If it's Chukudi, I'm not doing this deal. Is it Kemi? I don't like Kemi. Kemi did this, Kemi did that. I'm not doing this job. So, in this case, this fellow is competent. He can do the job. He's been doing it for decades. There's commonality, some sort of commonality, because he knows people in the industry and he seems to be well connected, so everybody knows him. So, yeah, in a sense, there's commonality. But is he credible? Especially when you talk about personal credibility. Maybe not. And because of that, financiers are not going to deal with him on this particular project. In fact, another guy was so, what's the word, upset about the whole thing. He strongly advised that I should not sell for this particular individual again. And if I'm going to be involved in this industry, the attitude was like, look, you're a new guy in this industry, so you don't know what's up. But just take it from me. You want to go find this industry, don't sell for this dude. You can look for anybody else and do business with anybody else in this industry, but don't sell for this dude. And that was his friendly advice. So, the bottom line, using this example, sales and business growth, business development is process driven. It's not magic. There's a process to it. There are principles to it. This process and these principles have been developed and spelt out over decades so far. I'm talking about Tom Hopkins now. That's 1980s. That is 40-something years right now. And before Tom Hopkins, there have been people who've been writing in the 20s and in the 30s and even longer. So this whole thing about sales and business development, it didn't start today. If you look at YouTube and listen to podcasts and blogs, you get the impression that maybe marketing is a 10-year-old industry. But it's not. We just like pretending like we've discovered something new. And of course, you have to try and market yourself. So, you change one or two things, growth hack this, marketing tactic that, and, people talk as if they've invented something new. There's nothing new under the sun. These principles have been here for a while. They've been teased out for decades and hundreds of years. So your part of the process is to, number one, know the process. In this case, the 3 C's, commonality, credibility, and competency. And follow it faithfully. You do that and your projects improve over time. You don't, and then people don't want to do business with you. If you skip the small stuff, like this, elements of trust, because some people think, but it's no big deal. I'll go behind, I'll cut so and so out. Like, what's the big deal? You're going to end up hurting yourself in the future. So that is the reason why I bring this up again, because it is tempting that maybe after 20, 30 years in the industry, everybody knows who you are. You start sweating the small stuff. You start skipping the small stuff. Trust is not important. These guys are leeches. Let me go behind them. It's causing all kinds of problems in your industry. So, do you think that folks are heavily resistant to doing business with you? When you hook up with people, you're in the early stage of conversation. It looks like people don't want to do business with you. Then connect with me on LinkedIn. You might not be paying attention to early elements that are critical to the sale, critical to establishing trust, and reducing the level of apprehension, the level of resistance, the level of fear, the level of tension that folks have to doing business. with you. And that's all for today. Remember, you can subscribe for free. The name of the show is the Sales for the Nigerian Business Person podcast. It's available on Spotify, Google, Apple iTunes, Pocket Cast, Overcast. Those ones definitely there. Or you can check any podcast player of your choice, and I should be there. Remember also to connect with me on LinkedIn. The name to search for in the app, whether the podcasting app or LinkedIn, is Tavishima Ayede. If you have a problem with spelling that, just check the podcast profile by the time you're done with this. My name is spelled properly there. My email address is also there as well. So remember, for those of you who are still finding me on Instagram, one person a couple of weeks ago, or rather, it was a couple of weeks ago, I just replied recently. Sorry, but I'm not spending time on those platforms anymore. But the old videos are still on TikTok, they're still on Instagram if you want to have a look at the videos and see the kind of stuff that I used to make videos about in the past. So until then, I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Thank you very much for your time and attention.